Chapter 24. What war on drugs? Not like Rocky, like the character or the guy who played the character, Sylvester Stallone. Thought it would have been funny or not, but it was. In fact, an actor, one who had already done damage to black people, the one who had been gunning for Angelica Davis, who kept her from working. That's right, Ronald Reagan was running for president. He lost the nation to Gerald Ford in 1976. But he would come back in 1980 for a vengeance. He used an updated version of Law and Order Politics and the Southern strategy to address his constitutions and combat his enemies without ever having to say white or black. He dominated the media, and Angelica Davis was against him for the vice president seat and couldn't get any coverage. Created false narratives about the state of the country and won. And lots of things unfolded. New, shaky propaganda that many people took seriously about genetics coding us to be who we are, as if there was a gene for racism. New anti-racist feminist thought coming from writers like Bell Hooks and, of course, Davis, but nothing could be prepared for what was coming. 2 years into Reagan's presidency, he issued one of the most devastating executive orders of the 12th century. The war on drugs. Its role? Maximum punishment for drugs like marijuana. This war was really won on black people. At the time, drug crime was declining. As a matter of fact, only 2% of Americans viewed drugs as America's most pressed problem. Few believed that marijuana was even that dangerous, especially compared to the much more addictive heroin. President Reagan wants to go to war against drugs? If you're like me, you're asking yourself, was he on drugs? Yes. Yes, he was. The most addictive drug known to America. Racism. It causes wealth and an infatuated sense of self and hallucinations. In this case, it would unfairly incinerate millions of black Americans. And in 1986, during his second term, Reagan doubled down on his war on drugs by passing the Anti-Drug Abuse Act. This bill gave a minimum 5-year sentence for a drug dealer or drug user caught with 5 grams of crack, the amount typically handed by blacks and poor people, while the mostly white and rich users and dealers of powder cocaine would operate in neighborhoods of fewer police, had to be caught with 500 grams to receive the same 5-year minimum sentence. Let that sink in. Same drug, different form. One gets 5 years in prison if caught with 5 grams. It's the size of 2 quarters. The other gets 5 years in prison for 500 grams, the size of a brick. The result should be obvious. Mass incarceration of black people, even though white and blacks were selling and using drugs at similar rates. Not to mention, police officers policed black neighborhood. The more police, the more arrests. It's not rocket science. It's racism, and it would once again tear the black community apart. More black men were going to prison, and if they came home, it was without the right to vote. No political choice. Also no jobs. Not just because of felony charges, but because Reagan's economic policies would cause unemployment to skyrocket. So violent crimes rose because people were hungry. And according to Reagan and racists, it was all black people's faults, not the racist policies that jammed black people up. And the media, as always, drove the stereotypes about discussing the racist framework that created much of them. Once again, black people were lazy and violent. The men were absent from the home because they were irresponsible and careless, and the black family was willing due to this, but especially, according to Reagan, because of welfare. There was no evidence to support any of this. But hey, who needs evidence when you have power, right? The worst part is that everyone believed it, even black people. And to upset that image, or at least attempt to, another TV show was created portraying the perfect black family. The Cosby Show. A doctor and a lawyer with 5 children in the upstate section of Brooklyn Heights. Upper middle class, healthy marriage, good parents. The father, Heathcliff Huxtable, played by Bill Cosby, even in his office in his home, so that he never has to risk not being there for his children. There's the older, more responsible daughter, the rebellious second daughter, the goofy son, the awkward and nerdy third daughter, and the cute, lovable baby girl. And their collective roles of family of extraordinary Negroes was to convince white people that black people were more than what they're being portrayed to be, which of course was racist in and of itself, because it was basically if a black family didn't operate with the Huxtables, they were worthy of respect. And of course, the Cosbys didn't nothing to show Reagan's war. If anything, the show created a more polarizing view, because in 1989, a Pulitzer Prize-winning, Harvard medical degree-holding, Washington Post columnist named Charles Krafthammer invented the term crack baby. It was a term used to blanket a generation of black children born from drug-addicted parents, saying they were now destined for infusion, that they were subhuman. The drugs that has changed their genetics. There was no science to prove any of this. But who needs science when you have racism and shape? And the term, that label, crack baby, grew more arms and wrapped around black children all over the inner cities of America, whether it was true or not. Krafthammer and racists have basically figured out how to create a generation of criminals in their minds. But black people has always fought back. And in this time, in the late 80s, after the election of George H.W. Bush, who of course used Reagan's racist ideas to win, they would beat racism back with a beat. I'm going to read chapter 25 as well. The Sound of Sorrow and Subversion. 1988. My mic sounds nice. Check 1. My mic sounds nice. Check 2. Hip-hop had arrived. It had been about a decade since I was born in the South Bronx. Bet and MTV started hearing hip-hop shows. The Source magazine hit newsstands that year, beginning its reign as the world's longest-running rap oracle. But it was the music itself that was drive to empowerment. Here are a few songs from that year. Slick Rick's Children's Story, Ice-T Colors, NWA Straight Outta Compton, Boogie Down Productions, Stop the Violence, Queen Let Out, Wrath of My Madness, Public Enemy, Don't Believe the Hype. It would be Public Enemy that really set the tone in the following year. In 1989, they wrote a song that was placed in Spike Lee's Black Rebellion movie, Do the Right Thing. The song was a forceful mantra, an updated version of Stokely Michael's Black Power, and James Brown's Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud. The new generation of hip-hop heads and rebellious black teenagers angry about racial mistreatment, it was Public Enemy's Fight the Power. And it was all the black feminists thought, including the work of William Crenshaw, who focused on the intersection between race and sex. Women rappers like MT Light and Salt and Peppa took their place on the hip-hop stage. Actually, they fared better than women in Hollywood because at least their art was in mass collection. Aside from Julie Dash's pawnizing Daughters of the Dust, black men were the only ones producing major black films in 1991. These included illustration films like Mario Van Peebles' New Jack City, Jonathan Singleton's debut anti-racist tragedy, Boys in the Hood, and Spike Lee's contemplated territorial relation satire, Jungle Fever. Black people produced more films in 1981 than during all of the 1980s. Black man George Holliday shot the most influential racial film of the year on March 3rd. From the balcony of his Los Angeles apartment, he was filming a 25-year-old black man, Rodney King, being brutally beaten by 4 Los Angeles police officers. The black public, broke open. The leaves holding back from the waters of righteous indignation crumbled under the sight of these officers' batons. How much more can we take? How much more? President Bush danced across the issue, appointed a black Supreme Court Justice, Clarence Thomas, to replace Thurgood Marshall, as if that were to pacify an angry and hurt black community. And to make matters worse, Charles Thomas was assimilated in the wrong way. He saw himself in the king a self-reliance. He a put-yourselves-up-by-the-bootstraps guy kind of guy. Even though his work as an activist got him to the fancy schools and landed him this fancy job. And added to the racist cherry on top, Clarence Thomas had been accused by a woman named Hill of sexual harassment when he was served as assistant in an earlier job. Nothing was done. No one believed her. In fact, she was prosecuted. So in 1981, Angelica Davis was reeling. Her year had started with the brutal beating of Rodney King, and ended with the verbal lashing of Hill. Except the reminder that being black and being a woman was enough a double whammy. The year also ended in Davis in an unfamiliar place. She had been taken a new professorship at the University of California, Santa Cruz, and stepped away from the Communist Party after spending 23 years as the most recognizable communist in America. The party refused to acknowledge the issues that Davis had fought so hard to bring to light. Racism, sexism, elitism, the things the Communist Party only took advantage of participating, so she left. But she didn't jump from communist to Democrat, or rather a new Democrat, as the party was going through a bit of an overhaul. A revamp. Fictionally liberal, but tough on welfare and crime. And the man leading this new Democratic Party was a dazzling, well-spoken, and calculating Arkansas governor named Bill Clinton. It was 1992, and by the time the cops who had beaten Rodney King were not found guilty, Clinton had already run away with the nomination. Who could think that when America had just told millions of people who had watched the Rodney King beating that those officers had done nothing wrong? So black people hit the LA streets in rebellion. It would take 20,000 troops to stop them. Bill Clinton blamed both parties for failing black America, while also blaming black America for uprising, people immense pain, lawless vandals. About a month later, Clinton took his campaign to the national conference of Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Coalition, though Jackson was widely popular among the racist whites whom Clinton was trying to attract to the New Democrats. When Jackson invented the hip-hop art, his sister Julia, to address the conference, the Clinton team saw its political opportunity. The 28-year-old Bronx native had just released 360 Degrees of Power, an anti-racist album so proclamated that it made Spike Lee's films and Ice albums seem like The Cosby Show. And Clinton's response to suffrage union was that she was being racist. It was a political stunt, but it thrilled racist voters and capped tilt into a lead he never lose. By the end of 1993, rappers were under attack. They were being criticized from all sides, not just from Bill Clinton. 66-year-old rights veteran C. Grace Tucker and her National Political Congress of Black Women took the media portrayals debate to a new racist levels in their strong campaign to ban and gangster rap. To her, rap music was setting black people back. She felt like it was making black people more violent, more naturalistic, more sexual. To Tucker, the music was making its urban listeners inferior, though she never said anything about its suburban listeners. While Tucker is on shutting down gangster rap, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology historian Elmers mobilized to defend against the definition of black womanhood. More than 2,000 black female scholars from across the country made their way to MIT's campus on January 13th, 1984, for Black Women in the Academy, Defending Our Name, 1894 to 1994. Among them was Ellen Davis. She was the conference's closing speaker. She was clearly the nation's most famous black woman academic. Most importantly, over the course of her career, she had constantly defended black women, including those black women who even some black women did not want to defend. She had been arguably America's most anti-racist voice over the past 2 decades, unwavering in her search for anti-racist explanations when others took in the easy and racist way of black blame. In her speech, she proposed a new abolition, pushing for a rethinking of prisons and how they function. 10 days later, President Clinton endorsed basically a new slavery. 3 strikes and you're outlaw. It was called the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Law, giving hard time to certain 3-time offenders, which ended up giving the largest increase of the prison population in U.S. history, mostly on non-violent drug offenses, mostly black men. Of course, this once put more fuel into the black people are naturally criminals vehicle, a vehicle that's been driving for the longest time, running over everything in its path. But there was another academic debate brewing, and where black people were natural or nurtured fools. And this particular debate had serious political repercussions for Clinton's tough on blacks New Democrats and was forced on American politics, which pledged to be even tougher. End of chapter 25.